Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable, a state law restricting how doctors can prescribe abortion-inducing medications is overturned, and the state schools chief threatens another lawsuit against the Board of Education. Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Mary Jo Pitzel of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Luigi Del Puerto of the Arizona Capital Times. An Arizona abortion medication law was overturned this week. The law passed in 2012 and restricted the prescription of abortion-inducing medication. Was this court ruling a surprise at all, or?
No, I don't think so. Anybody who's followed the rollback abortion rulings that have come out of the legislation that's come out of the state legislature in recent years would not be surprised. The drill is usually some more restrictive legislation gets passed, gets signed into law, and is challenged in court and is usually held up in court. And this is the latest example.
Yeah, and what happened is that the judge said that the legislature basically screwed up. The idea is that the legislature said you can only use RU-486 as abortion pill as prescribed by or as allowed by FDA labeling, which is fine, but the judge said, now wait a second, the Arizona Constitution says the legislature can't delegate its authority to anyone else. So since the FDA could change the labeling at any time, the judge said, no, you can't make the FDA responsible for Arizona law.
Yeah, that's right. It's a concept called a changeable standard. And the court said, well, the changeable standard basically means that when the FDA changes its protocol on this particular drug, then presumably that protocol would now apply here in the state. And if that's the case, well, the court said that's unconstitutional delegation of authority, because then your law is essentially changing depending on what the feds decide later on.
And what's interesting is theoretically the legislature could get around that by simply saying RU-486 is only useful through 7 weeks, leaving out the FDA. But there's a parallel case in federal court on the same law that deals with the issue of, is this an unconscionable and unacceptable restriction on the rights of women? And in fact, the Ninth Circuit has already issued an injunction against the law based on that, an injunction that the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld. So even assuming this case got overturned or the legislature found a way around it, the law's still in trouble.
The bottom line here is the court basically saying that the legislature can't tell the FDA how to prescribe drugs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. And because of what Howie said, I think it's questionable if there's any sense in trying to make another run at redoing this legislation in a way that might be legal.
The case regarding doctors telling patients that abortions can be reversed, where do we stand on that?
Well, this is basically about the same procedure, medication abortions. There was some testimony at the Capitol earlier this year that said, look, it involves 2 drugs, it's RU-486 and then a second drug, that if you give large quantities of progesterone, which is a hormone in between that, you can reverse the process. And they brought in some doctors who said, I've done this. And based on that, the legislature said, now you have to tell women it may be reversible. Only problem is there isn't a single scientific study to back that up. It's anecdotal evidence. And so the case was supposed to go to trial next week on that. That also is on hold. And what happened is that the state agreed, well, we'll enter a preliminary injunction. We'll agree not to enforce it, recognizing that perhaps we have problems up the road.
And it was the plaintiffs that wanted the delay on that one, correct?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and this was one of those bills that just squeaked through the House. I mean, it came down to a rather vigorous floor debate, and I think it passed with like 1 or 2 votes to spare. That was it.
Sounds like not the best of weeks for Kathy Herod.
No, and it's particularly on this issue, abortion. We've seen several bills turn into law and then later on overturned by the courts. I mean, this is not surprising. But I don't reckon that it will stop Kathy Herod and the Center for Arizona Policy, and of course, socially conservative lawmakers from trying again. I mean, they've been trying each year, and I reckon next year they'll try something. Something new.
Yeah, well, and the fact is the courts have upheld certain things. The test in a case called Casey that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on is whether it presents that unreasonable restriction on the rights of women. So, for example, 24-hour waiting periods have been upheld. Requiring a woman to have an ultrasound has been upheld.
The doctor's visit that you have to go do
two
Right.
visits has been upheld. Now, it's interesting that abortion foes, including Kathy, keep trying to nibble away at that. Some states are passing this 20-week abortion ban. We tried that. That's been put on hold. Questions of 72-hour waiting periods. And this gets decided on a case-by-case
With that
basis.
all taken into consideration, next session, do we see another slew of anti-abortion bills?
Well, slew might be too strong of a word, but yeah, usually it's not a legislative session without tax cuts and abortion restriction bills.
So regardless of what the courts say or do, we're going to see them.
Well, I mean, there's different ways to go about this where the courts haven't gotten involved yet.
In fact, the whole strategy of social conservatives that are fighting on this front is incremental change. They know they can't attack Roe v. Wade directly, at least not here in the state. And they know that's probably a dead end at this point. So what they're trying to do is chip away at that. So they've been nibbling at the edges and getting closer and closer to the core of this particular court opinion.
And they've been doing parallel attacks. Remember, they passed a bill to say that any organization that does abortions, because you can't use state and federal money for abortions, but any organization that does abortions with its own money cannot also get state and federal money for other services, women clinics. And that was struck down. So now we're going to see a new round of that, what with the videos. We know that Congress is going to try to do that. And again, this is a broad-based set of challenges.
Yeah, and everybody knows is that this will all end up in court. Whatever they do next year, assuming they do something next year, they probably will get it out of the legislature, given their influence there. But it will most likely end up in court again.
All right, Diane Douglas, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, is considering suing the Board of Education again.
Yes, because she says the board is delaying the work that the department needs to do in certifying teachers. You've got to, this is part of the whole stalemate that she has with the board, and she was back in court today. I did not go. My colleagues were there, and Howie has some interesting sound bites, I think, from that hearing.
Well, we're now working on 3 lawsuits. The first lawsuit, of course, was what the Diane filed, said, I've got the right to hire and fire the board employees, and Judge Starr said, I don't think so. Second one, which was back in court today, was the issue where the board sued her because their investigators want remote access after they all fled her offices earlier this year. And Judge Anderson, it was interesting. He said, look, I would nice if you guys would work this out, but let's get back to the views of education and dealing with education. Now, the third lawsuit yet to come is now she is threatening because they're trying to hire a replacement for the board's executive director. And she's saying, no, Title 15, the education title, says I get to make the recommendations, and the board is saying, well, no, we get to do the hiring.
And so she's also basically threatening anyone who applies for the job, saying, if they
It would be
hire
temporary.
you, you may not be in there for very long.
That's exactly right. And basically, it's based on that statute, which had been litigated before. And now she's saying, look, if you apply for this position, there's a chance you might not have it even if you get it. Or if you get it, you might not be there for long. So just be warned.
Again, this seems to just all beg, could some lawmaker come forth in 2016 and write a clear piece of legislation that draws clear lines of authority? That's why we're in court. That's why you have judges lamenting, can't you guys get back to the business of educating kids instead of fighting over who has jurisdiction? This could be resolved with a clearly defined law.
And we should say that we thought we had something along those lines last session. There was certainly rumor of that sort of thing, and it just went puff.
It sort of fell apart, and you got different theories. There are some folks who said, well, this seemed to take away Diane's powers, and we don't want to do that. The law is a mess. I mean, the law says that the board shall hire staff, quote, on recommendation of the superintendent. So Greg Miller figures, fine, I will put you, Ms. Douglas, on the committee that will make recommendations. She said, no, I don't want to be on the committee. I want to make the recommendations. That she has made 2. And Greg Miller, who's the board president, said, fine, we'll add them to the other 48 we've got, and we will do it on our own.
3 lawsuits, third likely
Coming.
coming. So that would make 3 lawsuits. Is this ever going to end?
My feeling is it's not going to end anytime soon. In fact, as you know, Diane Douglas a couple days ago laid out her education proposal, and Greg Miller, wrote this white paper, if you will, just nitpicking and tearing apart, points that Dan Douglas had raised in her education plan. The point is that they're fighting, there's bad blood, and that fighting is going to continue.
Speaking of fighting, or at least not seeing the same thing, the education lawsuit. We keep hearing that the inflation adjustment education lawsuit, where it's supposed to be a settlement maybe, then all of a sudden talks broke off. Now there's rumors there's maybe a settlement again. Will we get this figured out? Will inflation adjustments for education funding, will those be resolved?
Well, the last thing we got we got two things from the Court of Appeals. Number one, on a 2-to-1 vote, the judges said, we're not going to force the state to cough up that $330 million.
Right.
The other judge said, I'd like you to, but that's how it happens. The other thing that happened is the Court of Appeals entered into an order saying, look, normally we want the paperwork by a certain date, but based on the fact that we hear talks are taking place, we'll put it off and we'll let you guys continue to play with it. And that the talks are going on, and to a certain extent, if you can keep it simple, actually it would be great if you keep the attorneys out of the room and in fact keep certain lawmakers out of the room, I think you could actually do it.
Injunction though, didn't the injunction say you don't have to immediately pay it?
Immediately.
It wasn't saying that you're off the hook for it, just not now.
Just not now. And obviously go to the Court of Appeals, Court of Appeals will issue a ruling, go to Supreme Court, we'll stay it. Then we've got this parallel lawsuit back in Superior Court on the $1 billion+ dollars. But for the moment, at least they're talking. They are talking, and the choice for schools is going to come down to what's the best we can do. Their plan A is settle a lawsuit. Plan B is, well, if we can't settle a lawsuit, maybe we'll just take Doug Ducey's money and then go from there. And there is money out there.
And they are talking, correct?
They are talking, and the question is whether they would come up to some sort of a settlement, or not settlement, a compromise, some sort of a final resolution, and whether that resolution, whatever it may be, whether that would be part of a special session that could happen, might happen, that we know the governor's office is pushing, before the next session.
Do we assume if there is a special session, if all of a sudden out of the blue a special session is called, do we assume that a settlement has occurred in some way, shape, or form?
No.
No.
No, because as Howie said, perhaps Plan B from the plaintiff's side is that if you can't get the settlement hammered out now, Governor Ducey's got this plan to take money, accelerate distributions from the State Permanent Land Trust, sort of money in hand. Maybe you should take that so you've got that for the coming school year. I don't think you can assume anything. I mean, and they are talking, but we ran into one of the negotiators at lunch, and Howie and I were out to lunch, and this person wandered in, and they can't be at it too hot and heavy if they got time to come out for lunch.
Right, and the other thing that and the other thing that we're hearing, at least from some members of the legislature, is the fact that they do want some sort of a settlement before going to special session, at least having having some sort of a resolution to this lawsuit before agreeing to a special session, which could be problematic, which could happen or not.
And part of the problem is you have little outside interests that are nibbling away at the edges. I mean, on one hand, you've got the Children's Action Alliance that's nibbling away at the Biggs plan, saying, what do you mean you're going to take money from early childhood development? You've got the Maricopa County Republican Party, bless their hearts, telling people vote against every bond issue, every override, because schools don't need more money and they have to live within their means. And this is the kind of stuff that pulls folks out, pulls people apart, and it's going to make it real hard to come up with a consensus.
Another point about the settlement is that I do think that there is a strain of lawmakers, a subset of them, who want this thing to. They think they've got a good case in court to dispute how much they need to adjust forward or upward the base amount, and I think they'd rather see that play out in court.
And of course,
and it buys you time.
Yeah.
Right, and of course, the conundrum that the state will face is that if you do approve or pass Doug Ducey's land trust proposal, and then the voters then approve it in next year, the question is what happens when the court decides in favor of the schools, and now you have another $330 million problem that you're facing, and presumably, that could grow depending on what the court does to the other component of this case, which is
there's a lot of whistling past the graveyard here. It seems to me. I mean, I understand that they think they have a good case, but you're walking a pretty fine line there if you don't.
Well, obviously, and that's the thing. You can never guess what a court will do. And ultimately, this is going to wind up, as we all know, before the Supreme Court. Supreme Court has already ruled once that the inflation formula means what the inflation formula says. You know, you don't get any ifs, ands, or buts. Now we're arguing about the amount. And so, as you say, I think for the lawmakers to say, oh, that's okay, you know, we're going to be just fine, that's betting on something I wouldn't bet on.
Yeah, the risk, of course, there are risks to both sides. You know, the risk for the schools is that they'll get a smaller amount.
Yeah.
The risk for the state is that you're going to be facing a pretty hefty amount that you're going to have to look for. And you know, I did a calculation a couple of weeks ago, and you're looking at potentially, if the schools get everything, roughly $2 billion.
Yes,
Well,
and where are you going to find that?
that's the question.
And this comes back to the question. We know earlier this year that the School Board Association made an offer to the state. Give us the $330 million, and we will forget about the billion plus. Yes. And the state turned it down. Now, you got to wonder, is that still on the table? Or are they figuring, hey, we've won, the heck with you?
What's interesting in all this, you know, with all the different proposed solutions, no one's talking tax increase because, you know, that's heresy. But recent history shows us that that temporary 1 cent sales tax increase that Governor Brewer pushed through, that raised about $1 billion a year. So, you know, $2 billion, I don't know, you know, and a lot of that measure went through pretty easily. And later,
with the governor helping push it, this governor going to
Republican
help?
governor.
Yeah,
No,
this
no,
Republican going to?
No, he said that he won't be open to any tax increase. He said that many times.
All right, New Times with an interesting story this week regarding Tim Jeffries. That's Dr. J to you.
Yes,
the new chief of DES, and he's quite the evangelist, quite the crusader. He's quite the fellow.
Well, it's interesting because DES had a reputation, even before they broke off Department of Child Safety, of being, you know, a bad place to work, treated people badly. He sort of come in and said, we're going to be the kindler, gentler agency, and we're going to treat people nicely, and we're going to address them as Mr. So-and-so and Mrs. So-and-so. There's a fine line in there between saying we're going to treat people nicely and sort of a religious fervor, and I think that's where some folks may be concerned.
well, what's happened with this kindness directed towards the clients of DES, which, you know, seems like wouldn't you want to be nice to your customers. But Jeffries has had issues with some of the staff and has let about 70 odd employees go, and not just let them go, but he's called them bullies and liars, and felt that they were basically dead weight in the agency. It's hard to tell because we haven't heard back from those people. We can't. Haven't looked at personnel files.
Yeah, bullies and liars and bad actors. And when questioned about it in that New Times story, he basically said goodbye and good riddance. I mean, this guy's.
That's right. And you mentioned the word evangelist, or something like an evangelist seal, and you can actually sense that in the videos that his DES had put up several videos, and he talks about being, he uses pastor's language. He talks about how you have to be good shepherds, that you have to be the Praetorian Guard of this cultural that they're trying to create over there, that you have to nobly discharge our humble duties. Clearly, his faith is showing, and he's not shy about that.
Any tangible impact as yet?
It's early to tell yet. I mean, he's been there for a couple months. If he can change the culture at DES and make it into what he wants it to be, which is a kindler, more humble place, then surely that will have a huge impact in how we deliver services.
Again, up to the line, kindler, gentler. But if it suddenly becomes almost a religious test,
Yes.
Now you're getting into very, very tricky territory.
Speaking of tricky territory, Russell Pierce. I mean, he's no Falcon 9, but he can't stay off the email and the internet. What's he doing over there at the county?
Or the caps lock.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Or the triple question marks.
Yes. Well, Russell has strong opinions, as we've all known, and whether it's about taxes, school overrides, immigration. I've been on his email list for a long time, and it's nice. He has a little Cox.com account. His problem is he doesn't seem to be able to separate his Cox.com account from the one that belongs to the government. And there are rules against that. And he was essentially admonished and told, Russell, behave.
Works for Treasurer Charles Hoskins and was writing Enough of the Lies of the Left, Profits Over Patriotism Crowd. He was talking about illegal immigration enforcement was his big deal. He wrote an awful lot. I mean, apparently this elderly assistance program he's running must be in great shape because he's got a lot of time to be writing these missives.
Yeah. We in the Yellow Sheet report, one of our headlines says, "Well, did he write this during lunch break?" Russell is being Russell. I don't think he can help himself. He is very opinionated. And the fact of the matter is that he has clout. He's out of the legislature, he's out of the Capitol, but he has followers at the Capitol, the people who see in him a leader and who think that his ousting a couple years ago was unjust and who still believe in whatever he has to say. And so to a certain extent he has followers and that's why it's interesting.
But Luigi, that doesn't excuse not following the rule of law.
No,
I mean, how many
no.
times have we heard the rule of
No,
law?
and of course it doesn't. And you're right about that. The interesting point is that I think we wrote a law a couple of years ago that if you're working for the state government, for example, or in the case of teachers, you're not supposed to use the resources of the school district for political reasons. And this, in a way, this applies to him. And in that email, he talked about a dozen or so more policy issues on a wide variety of issues. And some of them are contrary to positions by the county. For example, he talked about VLT fees, for example, and how those should not go to local governments. Well, counties and cities rely on VLT fees for a large part of their general funds.
And again, the idea is no illegal, inappropriate, obscene, political, or personal gain purposes for that. What is it about that he doesn't understand?
Russell sometimes lets his emotions and sometimes his mouth and his fingers get ahead of his brain.
But the county has advised him,
told him-
along with his boss,
Yes.
Charles Hoskins,
Yeah.
by the way, these are the rules.
Yeah, well, of course, Mr. Hoskins himself, fired off a little letter to dear homeowners saying, here's where the legislature is screwing you. So
And that got a little political,
Yes,
didn't it?
yeah. Randy Pullen, what did he do?
Well, this is one of those
Former
things.
Republican Party chairman here in Arizona.
Yeah, he ran for state treasurer. He lost in the three-way primary last year. Randy, this is a problem with people who let their fingers get ahead of their brains. And Randy thought he was being a little bit of a smart guy. And during the Democrat debate, he's busy tweeting out, and they're talking gun control, and he's saying, well, okay, so if the problem is blacks being killed by blacks, let's take away the guns from blacks. Now, you read that on the surface, and you say, Randy, hello, what planet are you from? Now, he insists, and Mary Jo talked to him, I talked to him, he says, well, what I really meant to do was sort of poke fun at their position of gun control, but read what you send. You know that little send button there?
When you have to start your response with what I really meant to say, that's not a good thing.
No, and I mean, this is a tweet that went out in the middle of a debate, sort of the heat of the moment, and he's just saying he didn't quite get understood because his point is that taking guns away. Guns aren't the thing that make us unsafe. It's people who do not behave properly. So you could take. He was just trying to make fun of that.
But this still comes down to the issue. Look, we all do this. I mean, the good news is for our news stories, we've got editors and other folks, but we're all tweeting. We're all sending out little Facebook things. And it's that count to 10, breathe deep, how can this be read? And
Yes.
somebody who wanted a statewide office should know
Yes.
better.
And also,
Or just go get a Twitter conscience. Ask that colleague, what do you think of this?
Right.
No, people don't slow down on Twitter. Are you kidding me? What added to this is that Pullen was a former executive with the Republican National Committee. He was their treasurer as well, so he had a higher profile role. But he is, those are now in his past.
Last question on this, and you mentioned, some people still follow Russell Pierce at the cap. What kind of pull does Randy Pullen have? I mean, director led the state Republican Party. That should have something, right?
I don't.
Not much anymore.
I don't think so. I mean, if he won the treasurer's race, for example, if he were still a member, chairing the party, for example, he would have some pull. But I don't think he has a pool as big as, for example, Russell Pierce's
No,
has.
he stood with Governor Brewer on some of her more controversial proposals on the sales tax increase, on Medicaid expansion. He stood with her in support of that, which angered a lot of the base. I don't think he's got that kind of influence.
And not after this tweet, anyway.
Well, I mean, but again, this tweet may offend some, but there are others who might go, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is, they probably didn't want him to explain it, and they probably said, no, he was right the first time.
All right, well, stop it right there. Good to have you all here. Thanks for joining us. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we will discuss Nebraska's open primary system and how it might work right here in Arizona. And we'll hear about a Peoria healthcare facility with a healthy indoor environment. There it is right there. That's Monday at 5:30 and 10 on the next Arizona Horizon. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.